All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed getting to know your group for today. Had some fun getting to know our group and what kind of TV shows they were watching, and also we had some adventure in our group as well for taking stuff to a desert island. Next slide, please. All right, so now that you all have gotten to know your groups a little bit, like I said, you're going to definitely be spending some more time with that group of folks as the day goes on in small breakout sessions. We wanted to just sort of get a pulse about really what was going on with everyone as a whole with their workforce recruitment and retention plan. And we're going to do a couple of these Mentimeter exercises throughout our 2 days together. So there's a couple of different ways that you can access this question here and interact with everybody. So you can go to menti.com and enter 76587771. Or if you would rather, you have your phone, you can just take a picture with the QR code and it'll take it right there for you to that. But go ahead and either go via your browser or your phone, your smartphone there, and go ahead and answer. And so if we're able to put it into, I'm going to put it in the chat there, and the code there, and then I'm going to have Helen share our Mentimeter.
Yep, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, cool.
I'll stop sharing so that it can go over to Helen.
Nope, that's totally fine. And so you can answer whether or not the question for this one is, does your health center currently have a workforce recruitment and retention plan? And the answers are, you can either choose yes, no, or yes, but we need to make it more comprehensive. And so it looks like so far we have in the lead is yes, but we need to make it more comprehensive. So this is fantastic. And you guys feel free to, oops, code is wrong. The code is wrong. I'm so sorry.
The code on this screen is right.
Yep.
The other one didn't work though.
On chat is wrong.
Yeah, it's the
Okay,
8299 works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could follow the code on the screen,
yep.
And that'll work for all of the day, that would be perfect.
Yeah. So sorry about that, you guys. Sometimes they, I made this last week, I believe, and so sometimes they change the codes on us. So I didn't double check that. So my apologies. Okay, so it looks like overall you all have a retention and recruitment plan, but you're here to learn how to make it more comprehensive. And that really is our goal, is to really take you guys through elements that you can put into the retention section and also the recruitment section, and hopefully get some ideas from other folks about maybe what they've done and what has worked for them. So it looks like some of us have those plans, but you need to make it more comprehensive. And then some of you don't have workforce retention and recruitment plans at all. So it is our hope that by the end of our 2 days together, that you will have some of those building blocks that you can go back and that you can spend some time with your team, with leadership, all of the folks that are a part of that at your health center, and you can really finish it, finalize it, and then work on putting it into place. So, and I will just say that, this is a process, right? We have 2 days together, more like one full day, like 2 half days together. And so, like I said, it is our hope that really you'll come out with building blocks. It's going to take some time. We are here to support you afterwards, and that we hope you all can really, again, have those building blocks to build your retention and recruitment plans. Okay. I think we're good on the Mentimeter if we want to. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, and so what I want to do over the next about 5 or 10 minutes here, going to go pretty quickly, is really just talk about, what is a comprehensive workforce plan and why do we rely, or why are we really talking about workforce? Well, workforce is the fuel for our health center operations. And here at the Star Center, we really talk about that workforce as being the fuel. And so those health centers that have a full tank of fuel identify workforce as an essential organizational issue. You invest in appropriate operational staffing resources, and the fuel also has some key resources, which we refer to as our core components. And these core components, there are 8 different core components. Next slide. And they're also really just sort of subject areas as it relates to workforce. And with there's so many different things when it comes to workforce that we categorize them into these core components that we need to focus on with our health center workforce efforts, right? Because when we started doing our work at the Star Center, there's so many very different things. And so we wanted to make sure that we sort of whittled them down to 8 different things that we felt like were essential organizational issues, right? Essential components of your health center workforce. They're going to look different at every health center. So you're going to be hearing from a bunch of different folks today and tomorrow on our calls from all different types of health centers: rural, urban, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, everything in between. But our hope is that you're able to hear that you all have things in common, right? You all have things that we need to focus on and work towards. And even if we're doing things different, A, we might get to learn from each other, but B, we also just understand that, different health centers have different needs, but ultimately we have these core components that we're focusing on. So in our core components, really recruitment and retention plans really touched all of these different things, but really thinking about our data-informed workforce plan as well as our tested recruitment and retention strategies. Next slide, please. So in addition to the focus that we have here at the Star Center, because it's what we're funded to do, HRSA and BIPIC are really focusing on workforce. And I know you're hearing that and you're feeling that and you're seeing that through the RTAT, as well as developing our comprehensive workforce plans. Next slide, please. So what is a comprehensive workforce plan? So when BIPIC asked you all to develop comprehensive workforce plans, there wasn't a definition out there, but we worked with them to develop a definition, and we're excited to share that with you all here, that a comprehensive workforce plan is a process. Really, it's a plan, but it's also a process by which a health center assesses the needs of its patient and community and identifies strategies for both building and sustaining, recruiting and retaining its capacity to support those needs through qualified personnel that embody mission-driven, equitable, and inclusionary values. And a comprehensive workforce plan, and we're going to go into all of these components during our next 2 days, but we'll go into those different components there. But really is, as you can see, it's not just how you're going to recruit someone or how you're going to retain someone, but it really goes into a lot of different elements that you're going to be spending some time building out here on the next 2 days, and then at your health center afterwards. Okay, next slide. I also wanted to mention that there is been a little bit of confusion between comprehensive workforce plans and strategic workforce plans. Sometimes those words have been used interchangeably, but we are going to be focusing our time together on comprehensive workforce plans. Strategic workforce plans are really focusing on the Health Professions and Training Initiative, and so just wanted to make that distinction here. Next slide. And so why do we have a formal workforce plan? Why do we have a comprehensive workforce plan? Well, for a couple reasons. So we want to track successes, what we're doing well. We also want to identify opportunities to improvement. We can really see what we might not need to be doing differently. And then through that data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, we're going to really innovate with those successes and opportunities. And then finally, our workforce plans ensures that we have alignment with our goals. Michelle's going to talk a little bit about mission later, which is super, super important to keep in mind when doing our comprehensive workforce plans. And then we're all moving in the right direction, right? We all want to be pointed towards the same goal and mission, and our formal workforce plans allows us to do that. So next, we just want to talk a little bit about how important it is to write it down and review it on a regular basis, right? So this is something that you want to make sure that you are, again, writing down. So anybody at your health center can take a look at it. They can review it on a regular basis. And doing that and looking at it on a regular basis is just so super, super important, right? You want to make sure that you are doing this optimally every year, and if not, at least every other year. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the main sections of a recruitment and retention plan, and then we're going to skip a few slides and get to really the heart of what we're going to be talking about over the next couple days. So first of all, we're going to start with an assessment. We're going to figure out where. We're not going to get too much into this in the next 2 days, but really as a part of a comprehensive workforce plan, you want to understand what your health center needs are, right? What are your patient needs? What are your provider needs? And really sort of doing, an assessment of where you are so you can understand where you need to go. And then you want to go into the retention section. We talk about retention before we talk about recruitment because the goal of our health centers is to retain the staff that we already have. And I know so many, and we talked a little bit in our small group, someone mentioned that, they're just really having a hard time, and not just with recruiting, but with retaining. And so by thinking about retention first, we're able to have the health center staff in our health centers stay there, and so we can have a base of our workforce, and then we can build upon it with our recruitment efforts there. So we start with an assessment to figure out what we need to do and how we need to do it. Then look at retaining our current staff and the programs in our retention, and then also focusing and switching our focus on to recruitment. So we're going to be talking about retention today, and then talking about recruitment tomorrow there. Next slide. So I think let's go down to the retention process this slide. Okay, so retention today, we are going to be talking about a couple different things here. We're going to be talking about mission, then we're going to be moving on to compensation and benefits. That's a huge one when it comes to health center workforce, both retention and recruitment. And then we're going to be focusing on work schedule and career path. So how can we retain our health center workforce through creative work schedule and also career path and career ladders? That's something that's especially important really for all health center staff, right? So not just folks that you bring in at the more of the entry level, what is typically known as the entry level positions, but all the way up to our providers and our care team staff to figure out where they can go and what they can do there. Next slide. Then tomorrow we're going to be talking about our recruitment processes, and it looks like a lot, and it is, but at the same time we're going to walk you guys through it each step of the process, and hopefully you all will come away with some building blocks to building your recruitment plan. Next slide. And then we're not going to spend really much time talking about it during our workshop, but wanted to mention that also in our comprehensive workforce plan, we also have some other topics there that you see here that can be incorporated into your overall workforce plan. Next slide. All right, and so throughout the next 2 days, you are going to be seeing some information and some sections of our recruitment, our retention and recruitment plan template. So we have all these tools available to you on our website. If you haven't seen them before, they are there, and we will also we will also send them out to you post sessions, being with us today, but I just wanted to call them out. So obviously and yes, we also will provide you a copy of the PowerPoint as well. So you get the PowerPoint, you'll get the recruitment and retention plan tools, and then we'll also send you a link to the recordings as well. So the reason I had the instructions circled here is because the template is blank, right? We've got everything there. It's a Word document. You can make it your own. But I wanted to circle the instructions because the instructions has really the sort of a lot of the protein, if you will, behind it. It tells you how to use the recruitment or retention and recruitment plan template. It gives rationale for every single section there. It also gives benchmark data as well as examples there. So when you take things back and after you finish your 2 days with us, obviously you'll have some things there, but when you plug it in, you can also use the instructions booklet as a reference as you're building it and as you're finalizing it at your health center. And you can, I think, yep. And then these slides just go down through the instructions, the template. Again, all of these things are in Word documents, and so you can make them your own. We were really big when we made these that we wanted to make sure that you can, make them. Just make them your own, personalize them, and really get them to where they needed to be. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Michelle, and she is going to talk a little bit about the health center history. I know most of you know that, but just want to bring it back up and then talk a little bit about JEDI Initiative. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. So can everybody hear me? I just want to double check. Okay, I'm not hearing any no's, so I'm going to say yes. So let's start talking about the health center history and JEDI. So we really wanted to put this in here because if we're going to focus, we're going to talk about, oh, thank you, Heather. I see that you said yes. I appreciate it. We're going to talk about recruitment and retention. How are we going to keep people in the health center? How are we going to bring them in? One of the greatest strengths that you have are your missions, your values. And a huge part of that is just understanding its roots and its history. So I have a quote here. This was actually written by Helen Ravenier, one of our training specialists for the Northwest Pulse. So that is the blog of the Northwest Regional PCA. And this is how she started her blog on where the health center movement traces its roots, really back to the civil rights movement, the migrant workers movement, President Johnson's war on poverty. As we all know, Dr. Geiger, Dr. Count Gibson, they were really the founders of the health center movement. And I see somebody, oh yes, of course, Carolina. So this is just, it's important to know again where you come from and the work that we're all doing. So I was hoping to get a little bit creative and have some videos. So let me do the share audio, and I'm just going to play some short clips from it. And since I am on the phone, I also have to make sure to mute it. So if y'all could just let me know in the chat if you can hear it, that would be great.
It was not a hopeful time. It was not a hopeful time.
Ambulances wouldn't come into the community without a police escort.
There was a lot of fear in the city. There was really no healthcare vision at all.
Going to City Hospital, sitting for hours waiting. You never saw the same doctor, but you didn't have any place else to go.
One long look at
I am so sorry. Apparently, if I touch something, it
was
stops.
not a
so I
hopeful
won't
time.
do that. And then we can watch it. My apologies.
ambulances wouldn't come into the community without a police escort.
There was a lot of fear in the city. There was really no healthcare vision at all.
Going to City Hospital, sitting for hours waiting. You never saw the same doctor, but you didn't have any place else to go.
one long look at Mississippi, and I realized I didn't have to go to Africa or Southeast Asia or Latin America. Poverty and lack of access to health care, we all had that problem here.
Jack Geiger saw community health care as an essential part of the civil rights movement. It began with residents being organized and eventually led to empowering communities in the broadest context of improving overall health. Both Doctors Jack Geiger and Count Gibson, who were from Tufts Medical School, envisioned community-based neighborhood health centers that would treat the entire family rather than just isolated medical problems.
So this is Mount Vernon Street. Columbia Point Health Center was right over here. The original grant application that Jack Geiger and Count Gibson submitted was for two health centers, a rural and an urban model. The urban was Columbia Point Health Center, and the rural was Delta Health Services in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. The folks in Mound Bayou ran into a lot of political opposition, and they didn't open until a little bit later. So by virtue of that, Columbia Point became the first to open its doors. It changed the actual community in several ways. It became a focus for community action and community organization, which was always part of Jack Geiger and Count Gibson's original conception. Secondly, it became a place where people could seek employment. And then the most obvious contribution was having primary health care services available immediately in their neighborhood.
Okay, so I am now going to go to, both of them are just going to be short little snippets, as I mentioned, but I'm going to go to the second video. I also realized that if I put the chat at the same time of the video, it's not going to let me keep playing. So just give me 1 second so we can go on to our next slide. But this is really just that introduction of how everything got started. And then I'm just trying to get the slide to, there we go. So this is a documentary called Out in the Rural, and I'm just going to show a small portion of it as well. And I don't know if any of you have seen this. If you have not, it's incredibly powerful and really shows the roots of what the health center movement was all about. So if you can all just give me 1 moment so I can get everything set up, you'll be able to watch about a short minute.
Economy. What kind of a place are we? I think we're a place that has as its primary thesis that the determinants of health are in the social order, not in health care. I've never seen any use in what I call the Schweitzer bit, which is the idea that you stand around in whatever circumstances, laying hands on people in the traditional medical way, waiting until they're sick, curing them, and then sending them back unchanged and into an environment that overwhelmingly determines that they're going to get sick. We think there's a better way to do it by using health services as a route of entry for these other kinds of social change. We're trying to do that here in, 500 square miles, 14,000 black people, with a median annual family income of $900 a year, with an average of 4 years of schooling in Mississippi schools, which very often means functional illiteracy, with an infant mortality rate of something like 70 per thousand. And so sure, we have the physician, nurse, lab, pharmacy kinds of action, all of the usual pieces of medical care. But much more than that. We take health care into the home. We do a lot of other things in the home.
Michelle, you're muted.
I hear you.
Thank you. Sorry. I muted my phone so that it wouldn't overlap the audio of the video. And I was trying to, all the technical maneuvering. But I'm glad everybody got to see that, because I know there were very, very short snippets, but really it was just about going back, since we're going to talk about the mission of why this is so important. So in this slide, we really have this more for you, to be able to read on your own time. I know there's a lot of text, but just understanding, what does justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion mean? And if you saw in both of those videos, that was really the foundation of ensuring health equity for everyone. And that means justice, that means diversity, that means inclusion, and of course the equity component of, everyone is afforded the same resources regardless of their social identities, and that their presence is not merely tolerated, but also expected to contribute meaningfully. And that's what health centers are really about. When we look at JEDI and the work that we're doing around this, how it's so foundational to recruitment and retention. You want to have a population, a workforce that is reflecting the patient population you're working with. And there's many different ways to talk about why JEDI matters. One thing that I really want to point out in this slide, though, is do not make a business case for diversity. Oftentimes, we're like, well, if we have a diverse workforce, we'll be able to increase our bottom line, all of those things. Do not put a number on the value of people. Talk about the social justice case, the functional case, the engagement case with leadership, but not a business case. And again, this is just a very simple slide. We really like this, where, what is the difference between equality and equity? Yes, things may be equal, but it doesn't mean that it's accessible to everyone. So, this slide just shows that in a fun little way. I also want to tell everyone about our Building an Inclusive Organization Toolkit. So we don't have time to really go into this toolkit, but it is available on our Star Center website. And the reason this is important is because this is such an important area, especially for the new workforce who is coming in. So really understanding how you build that inclusive organization is going to help in your retention and your recruitment tactics. And then finally, the evaluation of these R&R strategies. Again, we really wanted to put these slides in because we wanted all of you, to be able to go back and just have something that you can read and really utilize and incorporate into your retention and recruitment strategies that have that JEDI foundation to them. So again, I'm not going to read through all the questions, but these are just places to start when you're looking at your retention, when you're looking at your recruitment. And we're really going to hit on a lot of these different things as we go through today to make sure that you just start thinking about it. What do we need to ask? How should we talk to leadership about this? How are we going to make proper assessments of how we're doing this? And again, the importance of all this takes you right back to the mission and the values of the health center. And as you remember in the comprehensive workforce plan slide that Suzanne had up, it also starts with a vision. And all of this, again, goes back to those roots, goes back to those places. Now, what we did want to do is we wanted to be able to give you all a 10-minute break. So this is what I'm going to do. I am going to skip this Mentimeter. We will do the Mentimeter when we get back. So it says 10 minutes. I know we may have to cut it down a little bit. So everyone could be back at noon. That's Eastern Standard Time. So at the top of the hour, wherever you are, and then we'll pick back up again talking about the. So hi everyone, welcome back. So as you start to get settled back in, if you could please, we have another question for you in the Mentimeter. As I said, I wanted to be able to give you at least a little bit of a break. Just so you know, throughout the day, if you leave up your screen, it'll automatically update to the next question that we have on Mentimeter, so you won't need to just reopen it every single time. But as we start to get settled back in, if everyone could please just answer this question. And I see we do have one answer, and it says, yes, we're standing up an employee-led, CEO-sponsored anti-racism task force committee. That's awesome. That is so wonderful because, and then actually I see the next response that says, they say they do, but I don't see it in practice. So often that is exactly what we hear. And so seeing from this other health center, how, whatever you say, there needs to be action behind it. And that is so fundamental. We're also going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about the importance of all of these key areas. So what leadership says matters, in the way that if you're going to stand behind your principles, behind your mission, that also needs to reflect in the work that you're doing. So I see the other one says we have an equity and inclusion committee that works on this. That's wonderful. Not in the true sense. We do not, yes, but we need to include the justice piece. Absolutely haven't noticed. Not formal, but we have an incredible diverse workforce, need to create a formal program. And that's wonderful because many of you hopefully do have this diverse workforce. Make sure those individuals, if they want to have a seat at the table, but that also the individuals who are diverse, we're not utilizing them as the ones who, are supposed to teach everybody else. I mean, it's a very fine line, but there's so many wonderful things you can do, and starting with already having an incredibly diverse workforce, that's amazing. Try to hire people who fit our mission. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for answering. Oh, and I see we have a committee doing something, but haven't heard exactly what yet. Exactly. So that is one of the biggest things is, if your health center is starting a committee, if your health center, talks about the principles and the values of this, that needs to be reflected. And that really is on leadership, but also the staff, all of you, you're advocates for this. And you do hold, I think, a lot more power sometimes than we realize in these situations, but ultimately leadership needs to follow what they say. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. Thank you, Helen.